Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha, and I'm here with our family of seekers, and we're reading through the Bhagavad Gita verse by verse, studying the text, trying to really dive in deep and understand its meaning and its relevance to our lives. So we are in chapter 6, the Ashtanga Yoga chapter. This is the last chapter until we start the Bhakti section, by the way. So today, I think we're on 29. I think. I think we're going to start with 29. If we already did 29, somebody please let me know, but I think that's where we are. And chapter 6, verse 29. Is that where we are, Stella?
Yes, it's 29. We are ready to go.
Okay, great. Whenever you're ready, Stella.
A true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees every being in me. Indeed, the self-realized person sees me, the same Supreme Lord, everywhere.
Thank you. So this verse is referring to the super soul. Super soul is God in the heart, right? And the individual soul, we remember that everybody has an individual soul and super soul. The individual soul is limited just to one body. So we each have an individual soul. And that's the key difference. The individual soul is unique to each person or creature, while the super soul, God in the heart, is one and the same within everyone. And the yogi who has this vision doesn't see just like a person or doesn't see just like a dog, right? They see Krishna within the heart of both. That's what they see when they have this vision. Right? And beyond that, they understand that all living beings are ultimately connected to him. So when we're under the influence of material energy, the living entity serves the demands of the material senses. That's kind of by definition. When we're affected by material energy, we're just going around serving our senses, doing what feels good, right? What we want to do. But in spiritual consciousness, that same living entity serves the Lord directly. But in neither case, the soul's intrinsic nature is to serve God. But again, what happens is that we get confused. And because the soul's natural propensity is to serve, we serve, but we serve the senses when we're in that kind of illusion, right? So the basis of a yogi's equal vision isn't simply just like we're all equal in a superficial way, right? It's the realization that everything we see, every being, every energy is ultimately connected to God and under his control. Right? So if we go around like that, if we go around our days, everything that we see, every person that we encounter, every beautiful landscape that we get to see, we connect it to God. We understand that it's all part of God's energy. We like to take credit. We like to take credit, even like, as a nursing mom, you take credit like, oh, I'm feeding my baby. But no, it's God working through us. When we do these things, it's not us. No, it's all God's energy. And then when we can start to see things in that perspective, we become very grateful, right? We naturally become very grateful. When we think that it's me, that I'm the doer, that I'm doing all of these things, we become a little bit entitled, right? We become a little bit proud. So when we see things in its rightful perspective, it also just makes us better people. Right? It just makes us better people. We stop judging others by external differences, and we start recognizing that divine presence within every living being. We talked about this kind of concept a little bit when we talked about that verse where, in seer, a yogi sees a dog, a brahmana, was it a dog eater, all the same. Right? You see all the same. Here we're connecting it to Krishna. You're seeing that divinity in everyone and everything. Okay, so we will go to the next verse now. We'll go to 30. Whenever you're ready, Stella.
For one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me.
Mm. And this is like one of those mic drop verses, right? It's this,
Yes.
it's, this is a pretty big verse in the Gita. And what he's saying here is that someone who's truly in Krishna consciousness sees Krishna everywhere and sees everything within Krishna. So on the surface, it may look like they're seeing the same separate things everyone else does in the world, right? But deep inside, they know that everything they see is really a manifestation of Krishna's energy. Nothing exists apart from him. And he's the ultimate source and owner of everything. And when we really imbibe this understanding, that's the heart of Krishna consciousness. And it's easy to hear and to say, oh, yeah, I believe that. I know that to be true. But then when we walk around in our lives, it's so easy to start placing blame, right? Or to start taking credit. And when we're doing this, we should understand we're in material consciousness. And it's okay, but we're in material consciousness. Because when we're not in material consciousness, we understand that we again are just instruments and everything is Krishna's energy. Everything is Krishna. Even this, the beautiful car you own or the nice house. Right? These things aren't ours. These things aren't ours. We're caretakers, maybe for some time, or even our children. They're not ours. How can we be proud when these things aren't ours? It's like a child being proud of, that their home, or thinking that they're better than. It's like, no, these things aren't ours. Same thing with us. So Krishna's encouraging us to try to start having this vision, and not just like on the superficial level, but like on a deep level where when we in the way that we relate to the things around us and the people around us. Right? And if we can perceive Krishna everywhere, then we can stay connected with him even while living in this world. And that's kind of like the secret here. If we can perceive him everywhere, that we can stay connected with him. And this happens just, naturally when we are in love with someone, like a mother's in love with her child, everything reminds that mother of her child. Like you see it, like if your kid likes mangoes, you see a mango, instantly you think of your child, or like a little pair of socks or a toy. Sometimes if there's something on TV and it's like a baby, or like they're just getting ready to give birth or something, it just like brings tears to my eyes because I feel so emotional still about like, it's just everything reminds you, everything fills you up with just this love for God, because you're situated in reality where you're understanding that everything is God. So therefore, as we move around our days, that it's just constant, everything's just constantly reminding us. Right? The sky, the rivers, the mountains, the trees, everything's Krishna's energy. And through that realization, your heart naturally becomes attracted to him. Right? And this is Krishna consciousness at its highest level, this pure love for God. And in this state, the devotee's whole heart belongs to God. For them, everything is God, right? God is everything, and they feel completely fulfilled in loving him. And you think about the highest form of love that we experience in this material existence, it's oftentimes they say a mother for their child. And I feel that now, like, I don't need anything else. It's like, I don't need anything else. You have this, it's everything like just pales in comparison. But this love is even higher than that. This love that we can feel for God when our heart is completely full in loving him. Right? We can never feel separated from him. He's never out of sight when we reach this stage. Right? And we do this by seeing him in our daily lives, right? Even in the smallest ways. Again, appreciation for something beautiful. Right? Or even something happens to you, good or bad. We can see this is Krishna's arrangement. How do you guys do that? How do you in your daily life What are some things that help you remember Krishna, even in a small way? Do you guys have things like this? I know sometimes people have those little things that hang from their uh their mirrors in their car. I've seen like the little Hanuman, like the little flying, things like that. Do you guys have things in your life to help bring you back?
I don't know what I have on the daily, but I just have these moments sometimes that are so special. Like over the weekend, I got to go to this drive-through farm, and you're in your car and you're driving through this. They're like different fields, and they have all these animals, and they had so many cows, and they had all these cows of like different species, like not just what we normally see here in America. And the cows had the humps, and some were like painted gray, and like some had really big horns. And it's just like that in that moment, I was like, wow, Krishna, like at first I was like, oh, I don't know. I mean, I'll go because it's like I get to take Luna and I love to show her animals. But I was just like, is it just going to be like a sense gratification thing? Like, I'm like toying in my mind. But then there's all these cows, and immediately I was just like thinking of Krishna and India and how Krishna takes care of all the cows and how many varieties of cows there must be. And it was just like such a beautiful experience. But on a daily,
Didn't see anything
I don't
about
know, I just try to like put on a lecture or I don't know. I mean, I have Krishna stuff everywhere. So
it.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's so special. Thanks for sharing that.
yeah,
It's such a beautiful example too of how just that remembrance can take something from the mundane to the transcendental.
yes.
And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Shakti, what do you have for us?
Um, yesterday I have Jaden's like his one of his godparents, let's say. Um, my husband knows her since like kindergarten, and she came to visit. And we walked around Toronto yesterday, and she's a veterinarian, and she said, "Oh my goodness, I've never seen so many dogs." And she was just in such this awe of joy and people walking around with their dogs and holding them, and it was this beautiful, like it became like we're walking around this little kind of downtown kind of hip area, but it really wasn't about even that area. It was about like all the beautiful animals, and it just became out like a whole different experience. And so I'm like, she's like, oh, look, that's a so and so mix. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, what kind of is it? She's like, oh, yeah, that one's a very loving one. This one's a service animal. And we were just talking about like all these dogs. And it became so just different. Like, oh, let's go shop here. Let's buy more of this. Let's buy more of that. Look at those pants. Like it just became this experience of love for, because I know her also so long. So like love for her, for what she does, for her person, love for animals, love for the day, like the day being with people that I love. Like my husband and my son were there, and she was there, and it was like it wasn't about like where we were and what was happening and what we were going to buy, and like it was just a different experience. And I was just thinking like I really, like we were in the car on the way home, and I was, because of course we all get, well, a lot of us get up early, and so it was, for me it was a little bit later than most, and I was sitting in the car just thinking like, thank you, Krishna, for such a beautiful connection day, like just a day of connecting to animals, people, family, love.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, does that sound crazy or?
Yeah. No, and that ability to be in that moment and is also from Krishna, the ability to experience that, the arrangement, but then also, the way that you're able to kind of relish and appreciate,
Yeah, and
those
not
other souls.
where are we going next? What are we doing now? What's happening? Just being in the moment
Yeah.
with, yeah, it was really beautiful.
Yeah. That's so nice. Thank you, Stacy. Thank you. And on the chat, Mados says water and breath, the love that's unexpected. To be honest, just waking up. Yeah, that's so nice. And those are such simple things that are we so easily take for granted, right? Water and breath. Right? And Krishna says in the Gita, I'm the taste of water. Right. So it's like this is Krishna. We experience him everywhere, everything that we do, every breath that we take. Yeah, just like this meadow says. Yeah. So it's
Can I share? I want to share
yeah,
something.
please.
So, before I came to Georgia 18 years ago, I never drove. I had my license for quite a while in New York, but New York is crazy, so I never drove. And the moment I came here was 2 weeks after I had to start driving. And my job is like about 50 minutes away, but with traffic, it's like over an hour. And so it's really, really hard and trying to find different routes that might less traffic. So I found this one, and especially in the summertime, the entire road that I have to drive, it's lined with subdivision on both sides. And during summer, all the flowers and the trees are blooming, and it's so beautiful in the morning when you're driving. And I felt like I'm in heaven when I'm driving there. It is so peaceful, it is so beautiful. There isn't much traffic at that time, and I just drive and enjoy the moment. And I'm thinking, I love the trees, and I'm saying, it is so beautiful. And many times man don't have their hand in these. They're just random trees that grow, and it's all God's creation. And I mean, I share that with my coworkers, that how beautiful it is. And I've even mentioned feeling like you're in heaven. So yeah, I want to share that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Anita. Yeah, and you know the commonality of everybody who shared these things. It's like even just like the way these people, you guys are lit up. When you're talking about these different experiences and these different remembrances of Krishna, it you can tell in your expression in the way you're talking that it just lights you up. And that's what this remembrance does more than anything else in the world, that you can pay for, that you can it's like no, this remembrance of this is connecting this to divinity, and this gratitude that stems from that. That's the happiest, that's joy. That's at its essence, you know and we often tend to compartmentalize our lives into like our material side and our spiritual side. And this can be helpful to us, especially if we're just starting the spiritual path, like because it ensures that we carve out dedicated time for spiritual growth. But eventually the goal is that where this is all taking us is to move beyond this split, right? It's not about keeping spiritual life separate. It's about allowing this spiritual consciousness to permeate everything, even the so-called material parts of our lives. Even a drive down the road, we're going to work and we're in a hurry and we're in this material consciousness, but just to appreciate this scenery, and to appreciate that that's Krishna's energy. And we're getting
Radha.
to experience and relish that. Yeah, right now. Yeah, please share.
And it's not only in those good things that bring joy, because if you can practice thinking about everything as a manifestation of his energy, that even pain can be a manifestation of his energy, because there's nothing outside of God. So even when you're in pain, I find it to bring me maybe not joy, but relief, to say that it's all his energy. There's nothing outside of God. So even when, I have chronic pain, and even when I'm very in a lot of pain, that pain, if I can visualize it as his energy swirling through me, not, I try not to hold on to it. I let it flow through. It's, I can't do anything, but I'm still in his arms. Even if the arms seem like pain and I have to endure it and it's not fun and it hurts, um, if I can remember that there's nothing outside of God and that pain is actually, if I'm remembering him in that moment, I do feel gratitude that I'm such a silly person that I need something to remind me, not just the joyful things. And even this whole world where everybody's like striving and there's pain and there's politicians taking food out of children's mouths. It's all this sandbox Krishna created, and it's all his, and we're all just like, I don't know, it to me I feel joy, and even things, I don't know, and I haven't been tested even completely, but even in being like, I think about the men being disappeared and in America, and I think, here what if I'm in a cell? What if I was in a cage with 35 other people? I would still feel like our bodies were Krishna's energy. It's material energy, but there's nothing can separate me. Nothing can separate me because there's nothing outside of God. It's all his. It's all his. I know I'm sounding a little crazy,
Wow.
but
No, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I love that point that even if we're in pain, we can remember God. When I was in labor, I was like trying all the breath things, that people are big about the breath. And I was like, okay, trying all, to like, kind of help you feel better. And I was like, screw it. I just like started chanting. And that was when I felt the best during contractions. And I was like, wow, this is such a testament to this mantra. Like it actually works. Like in the moment, remembering Krishna, it makes you feel better, even if you're in a really intense situation. And that was kind of, and then it made the whole experience just kind of like magical and transcendental, labor. So it was yeah, I could totally relate to that, and such a great point. Thanks for saying that. Yeah. And Meadows says that the body is, I think, is just a conduit to higher understanding. Yes. No, this is exactly what we're talking about today. Yeah, it's when we see the body as a source, as something that needs to enjoy, we will suffer, right? But when we see it as something that is just a vehicle for this soul in this multi-life journey of spiritual growth and evolution, everything that happens to us, just like Stella says, good or bad, we don't see, we see as Krishna's energy, we see as Krishna's hand in guiding us along our journey of spiritual growth and evolution, and therefore we're grateful for it. It can turn things that are mundane and boring into fascinating because we're seeing it as this school for our growth, and not as how can I enjoy? Is this going to be pleasurable, or is this going to be unpleasant for me? We're saying, bring it on, because this is helping me grow, and therefore it's fascinating. And that's how the spiritual vision starts to change even our perception of of what is pleasant and what is not. Yeah, so if this can become our meditation, no matter where I am or what's happening around me, I will make Krishna my meditation. Right? Right? Instead of waiting for an opportunity to, get home where it's quiet and you can focus and be engrossed, which, also has its place, but we don't have to do that, right? We can remember Krishna wherever we are. Wherever we are. And with this sincere practice, this steady remembrance transforms how we see the world. This is how everything starts to take on a devotional life. Our entire life becomes that arena for offering service to God. Worldly events are teachers, showing us God's message in real time. right? That's a worldly event. It's showing us God's message in real time. It's just unfolding in front of us, right? What an opportunity to be able to bear witness to that. And therefore the whole world itself becomes a potential offering of love to him if we start relating to it that way. And this is what the Gita is telling us, that if we can reach this holistic vision, we'll never be lost to Krishna, and he'll never be lost to us. And this is so important to remember, because in this material world, it's so easy to get discouraged. If we think we're not actively doing our spiritual practices or spending time with spiritual people, we're far away from Krishna, right? It's like, you ever been like a retreat junkie where it's like, I just can't wait till the next spiritual retreat because the in-between time, I'm feeling low. Right? But this is what Krishna's telling us. He's actually only one thought away. He's only one thought away. That same high that you feel at the end of a spiritual retreat, you can feel every day by thinking of him. And this is his promise to us. And this is the symptom of an advanced spiritualist. They can deeply relish his omnipresence. They see him in everything. They see everything in him. And therefore he's never lost to them. They're never lost to him. And I feel like as you go forward on your spiritual path, this starts to become easier. You start to imbibe this. This was my experience. Anyway, it's like, I would love to go to India every year. I would love to. And there was a time where I was like, I'm never giving that up. But now it's like, okay, I want to get back there. But I feel so high, even here, even in my own practices, in my own relationship, that I don't feel like it's like a make or break. And this can happen. As we start to practice, we start to develop this connection starts to develop internally. Right? And therefore we become spiritually stronger, more spiritually grounded. And that's what exists for us. Right? Because Krishna cares so deeply for us that he accompanies us constantly. Right? He's living right inside our hearts. He's closer to us than anyone else could ever be. Like even your spouse who lives with you. Right? We can feel Krishna's presence simply by thinking of him. This is real. This is real. We don't have to move into an ashram. We can have that internal connection just as strong, if not stronger. That's where the connection exists. The external things help us. They help us to remember. But ultimately the external things are trying to take us inwards. And when that happens, something shifts. We start to feel calmer, clearer, more confident. These are subtle signs of his presence. If you're starting to feel these things, calmer, clearer, more confident, know that this is God. This is God. And it doesn't happen by accident. You have to train the mind to think of him. And it might not even be pleasant at first. We're so material conditioned that it takes a good amount of discipline sometimes to sit down and read, the Gita, or to come to these classes, or to listen. The Gita tells us it might at first feel tasteless, like poison. But gradually it will turn into something sweet and nourishing like nectar. So if it takes a little bit of discipline at first, it will get sweeter and sweeter. That's the promise of the Gita. And that's been my direct experience, actually. But we have to train the mind to think of him. And when we consciously do this during, spiritual activities, it gradually becomes a habit. And once it's a habit, it's so much easier to remember him in the middle of our everyday, ordinary lives. Madhu says, Krishna knows our inner workings, I feel. Yes, it is a discipline. I feel it's the ego, though. It's easy to slip into the ego when we're disciplined or when we're practicing any austerity, and that's where we have to focus more on the goal than becoming proud that we're driving there, right? Or that we think we're driving there. We have to be more focused on I'm doing this because I crave this connection, rather than I'm doing this so that I can, be better than this person, or I can be accepted into this group. It's those things. Maybe at first, those are kind of neophyte thoughts, but but if we're so focused on this connection, that's why we're doing this. There's nothing to be proud of. There's no room for the ego there, because it's just about connection. And even this connection is not us. This is Krishna's mercy giving us this connection. Our discipline, our austerity, that's just us reaching up. But ultimately it's Krishna's mercy that gives us this connection. Right? Because right now our vision, it's like a diseased eye. When someone has an eye problem and their vision is blurry and painful, but then they apply, some good medicine and the eye is soothed and they can see clearly again. That's our eyes. Our eyes are diseased by material desires. So we only see things in a materialistic way. Just that example of getting caught in the ego. If we're practicing that's materialistic. Right? But when we apply this ointment of love for God, we begin to see with the eyes of devotion. Where everything we do becomes an offering because we're in love. It's like serving my child brings me joy. Sometimes it brings me like several feelings all at once, like frustration and joy. It's like your child leaves and you can't wait for them to come back, but you couldn't wait for them to leave. It's like, but anyway, that's side tangent. We love God. We want to serve God. And that's the symptom of love, service. We love God. We want to serve God. And this is how we develop that. Right? This is how we develop this devotional disposition. As we advance spiritually, especially when we reach that stage of prema, pure love, this becomes our natural vision. And this is how saintly people see. They don't see the external body, they see God within the heart of every living being. So for you guys, do you guys feel like your vision of life is more material or more spiritual? How do you guys feel as you move about your days? Or what trips you up? How do you feel? It's more material or more spiritual? Is this difficult for you, developing the spiritual vision? Has it become easier over time? What helps you to develop this spiritual vision?
I think it's like a combination of both. Like I'm always like, it depends on how good my practice is. And I don't know, this class is like really helping me right now overcome like sometimes like you like feel guilty for like doing nice things. Like this whole week I was on vacation and I went camping and I did a lot of fun things with Luna and I'm just like, man, am I just steeped in sense gratification? Like you get in this mentality, but then like this class, it's like, well, the whole time, I was like out in nature, I was like cooking over a fire and I was just like, those things, they help ground me. They make me feel grounded. And when I'm grounded, I naturally have an appreciation for it. And I do recognize it as part of Krishna's energy. And I'm like, this class is like helping me realize like it's okay to like, if you are going to enjoy your senses, just understand that like it's all coming from Krishna anyways. And I'm like, is that just a cop out? But it's just like, no, like we should see the appreciation, the respect for it as Krishna's energy and spiritualize it, any activity that we're doing. And then I'm like thinking of previous classes we've had where, yeah, we've talked about like, there's kings, they have all the opulence in the world, but because they know how to use it in Krishna's service, they see it as coming from Krishna, they're allowed to have it, And so I'm kind of like, there's like a misconception kind of being cleared out of me during this class right now. So I'm appreciating that. And yeah, I think I don't want to, even saying I feel more often than not, I have more of a spiritual vision. I feel a little arrogant even saying that, but I mean, from when I was a small child, I can remember my dad telling me this verse in a different way, though. He was like, nothing is yours, everything is Krishna's. And I would contemplate that in like the sixth grade, like staring at my desk, like, this isn't my desk. Like, if anything, it's the school's desk. But then, even then, the school got it from somebody else. So, where did it originally come from? And eventually, I would get to the conclusion, okay, yeah, everything's Krishna's, everything is Krishna's. And I mean, obviously, I've not thought like that at times in my life. But when I can think like that, I feel like it does help you have that spiritual vision all the time. And just having that gratitude, like gratitude to me is like the turning point that really helps me realize I don't have anything unless Krishna's given it to me. So gratitude is probably my biggest practice whenever I
Mm,
actually practice it. Thank you.
yeah. Wow, that's a great one. Gratitude. It always brings you back. Yeah. Thank you. And the kid thing, that's a really good point too. This is just my own personal opinion as I've been like, I just became a mom and I watch different families and because it's really important to me to bring God to my child, in a way that's loving and connecting and not in a way that feels like, obligatory and my observation has been that the families that bring God in a way that's like kind of dry and that the kids kind of veer off. They look for fun. Kids want to have fun. Kids want to have fun. But the families that can connect the two, like let's enjoy nature and let's remember Krishna let's remember what this nature is. The families that can connect these things, the kids have a deeper relationship with God. This has been my observation, and this is therefore kind of been in my mind too, like we should have fun with our kids. We should teach our kids that God is fun,
Mhm.
you know, because they're kids, they're kids. They're not going to sit on the floor and chant 10 rounds every day. It's just not going to happen. And that's not going to help their hearts either. I mean, so maybe some kids, but what I've seen is like, parents that make their kids do these kinds of things, they kind of turn away.
Yeah, trying to incorporate it in the little moments. Like I can't always like think about it because I'm not always like conscious of it before or after, but I have these little moments sometimes with Luna where I'm like, yeah, and that makes me think of Krishna. And like I get excited about it, and then she'd be like, yeah, that is cool. And so yeah, as she's growing, you'll have those moments where you're just able
Mm,
to just inject it and like it'll just hit home for them too.
yeah. Yeah, or
And
even
you'll have,
like you bring her to kirtan and she's running around playing, having fun.
yeah, I
Like
don't
that's
make
a samskara, she's associating this environment with fun. That's important.
That's what I did at the temple growing up. It was just like I ran around, I went to the playroom. I wasn't usually in kirtan, but
Yeah.
you're still hearing it, you're
You're
still in that.
still hearing it. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So in today's dominant worldview of materialism, which denies or dismisses anything beyond the physical. If you can't prove it, it's not real. Right? In this mindset, the only possible enjoyment is material enjoyment. Right? And reality is only interesting to the extent that it offers material pleasure. Just like we were talking about earlier with Mariah's example of going to the farm or the drive-through farm type thing and seeing the cows, right? But the problem, just like she pointed out here, is that these material objects will eventually bore us. You can only derive so much pleasure out of them, and even that it's temporary. So therefore, in this materialistic worldview, enjoyment is always fleeting. And if there's nothing new to enjoy, reality starts to feel dull and empty. But the Gita's offering this completely different vision. If you can see Krishna everywhere, and Krishna is ultimately the reservoir of all happiness, this is what makes life fascinating. You can either adopt this mindset, or you can just continue chasing temporary fleeting happiness after temporary fleeting happiness, because that's what material energy is ultimately going to offer us. But when we can spiritualize it, it's endlessly fascinating. Just like the cows Mariah was talking about. She's just like in awe of these cows. I mean, who's in awe of cows? What materialist is just going to walk around in awe of cows? Right? But when we can connect it with Krishna, it brings us higher. Right? It awakens our spiritual senses, right? Which are currently dormant. But if they can be awakened, then they can bring us higher. And they're like, it's ever fresh. This is why we chant. This is why we chant the mantra. These divine sounds. We say the mantra is not different than God. They tune our perception to the same vision that advanced spiritualists have. That's why we chant. It opens our awareness to a reality that's far richer and more beautiful than the narrow view materialism allows. That's what we're doing. We're chanting, we're awakening our spiritual senses so that we can develop this kind of perception. Because without that, our default mode is material perception, right? And that's what happens. Our material senses can only see the random motions of matter. Spiritual senses see the purposeful actions of a loving God. And that's the difference when we encounter a situation, if we're seeing it with material senses or if we're seeing it with spiritual senses. Material senses are just going to see life events as good or bad in terms of our self-centered enjoyment. It's like relative to if this was pleasant or unpleasant for me, it's going to be good or bad, right? But no, spiritual senses open everything up to seeing it as opportunities for learning, for growth, for deeper connection with God. And we start to recognize how he uses everyday events to gently demonstrate his timeless truths. Right? Especially his unfailing love for us. Right? That's like the pinnacle. But when we start to see things like this, start to see life as the school for experiencing these spiritual truths, the reality becomes endlessly fascinating. Every situation, pleasant or difficult, it becomes a setting for discovering and living those higher truths. And that's the difference between material vision and spiritual vision. Right? So if you start to get stuck in material vision, stuck in, things didn't go the way that I wanted to. Just yesterday, I was doing a Bikram yoga class online with one of my good friends. I love this Bikram yoga class. I look forward to it all week. But my husband took the dogs for a walk right when I was doing that. And my daughter was sleeping at the time, but she woke up as soon as the class started. And right away, I'm just like, I've been looking forward to this all week. Now my daughter's like screaming. I have to and so I'm like battling my mind right in that because I'm feeling all the things, and it's like, okay, how could I make this an opportunity for more love and connection, without getting stuck in this isn't the way I wanted it. This is this strict material vision, the circumstances are not how I wanted. This isn't conducive for my self-centered enjoyment. I'm just frustrated and mad, which I felt. I'm not going to deny I didn't feel that. Absolutely felt that. I called my husband. I was like, where are you? But then I'm like, okay, how can I make this an opportunity for connection and growth? I'm doing Warrior 2 and she's like sitting on my leg. I'm doing like a balancing pose and I'm like holding her on my other hip. We have to kind of do that. We have to kind of talk ourselves out of it. We have to kind of talk ourselves down. Whatever's happening right now is custom arranged for your learning, your growth, your deeper connection with God. How can we see it like that? Because the difference between it actually bringing us closer to God and further away from God is our ability to see it like that. And if we see it as an obstruction to our self-centered enjoyment, it's going to create an obstruction between us and God, right? That's what happens when we put us in the center. God can't be in the center if we're in the center. But if we can see it as an opportunity to learn, to grow, to become closer to God, it will bring us closer to God. And that's the difference between material vision and spiritual vision. So we can kind of play with this, when just like that, just like when I'm doing this yoga class, and it's a relatively small thing, but these things happen to us every day. Things don't go the way that we wanted them to. We're frustrated, we're stressed. In that moment, can we stop? Can we recognize? Can we see where we're putting ourselves in the center, where we're trying to enjoy, where we're trying to control? And can we step back and see how we could show up in a way that's more conducive to our learning, our growth, our connection? And then observe the difference in how you feel afterwards. And that's how we know. That's how we know the presence of God, right? Because we're calmer, we're more clear. And that's God. That's God working in our lives. But it's our choice to turn towards God or to turn away from God. And this is the difference. This is just exactly what we're talking about, how something that could feel dull or empty, when we can start to see it with spiritual vision, it can feel exciting. Just like the cows, such a perfect example. The materialist probably drives through there and doesn't even notice. It's like, why are cows here? These are the most boring, mundane animal ever. Right? I want something more exciting. I want something more rare. You know, you can connect it with God. It feels ever fresh. Right?
Yeah, even when you can think of things like Krishna is the source of all remembrance and forgetfulness. So like it's not up to you to remember. Like if you do it's you do what you can, but it really frees you from self-blame a lot of times too. And I don't know, there's a healthy balance in there. But my daughter was just in a Shakespeare play, and she had the lead role with a lot of lines, and she kept thinking, well, Krishna's the source of all forgetfulness and remembrance. Like, she's trying to remember her lines, but because she heard that from being a tiny baby, that Krishna's the source of all remembrance, she like leaned on him. I don't know.
Yeah, that's so good. That's really nice. And that's a good thing for us to remember if you're like in a stressful situation. Like the other day at work, I was trying to do something really fast and it had a lot of intricacies. And the more that I thought about how I wanted to get it done, the more I like couldn't focus. But to even like get out of that completely and just think, okay, Krishna wants me to focus, I'll focus. Krishna wants
Yeah,
me to remember. Yeah,
I'll remember. Yeah.
I'll remember. It's not up to us. Whew, that's such a relief. Yeah, thank you.
I think another thing coming up for me with this class is just like how much it's like a relief. We get to let go. Like we don't have to try to remember um but also it's just like everything is Krishna's, so I can always ask him for help.
Aw.
Like Krishna, I need help. You could care for these things so much better than I can, or you can do these things so much better than I can, but I want to do it to help you, to serve you, not to help you, but to serve you. Please help me. And I don't know, that's coming up for me. And I've been also like just reading a lot about humility and how Krishna he wants us to ask for help, right? Like there maybe the reason he makes us forget or remember is because he wants us to cry out to him and ask for help. And yeah, so that's kind of coming to me is like we can ask for help, and that's such a beautiful thing. And he'll be there to help us because he's part of everything, right?
Yeah, it may not be helping us in the way that we thought he would help us, but we should know that he's helping us in this broader scheme of things where we define the world more as a university for our own growth and self-betterment than our, a place for us to enjoy and avoid unpleasant experiences, right? Once we shift that definition, then we can see that God really is helping us in everything. Yeah, thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Anybody else want to share any reflections that are coming up for them? Here. Yeah, when I was a kid, I remember feeling like, I was at my parents' house and everything was my parents, and like I needed to follow their rules, and because that was just like I respected them and I wanted to respect them. So I was looking forward to like having my own so that I could do whatever I wanted, because then it was going to be my own. But we should have that kind of mentality, if you're like at a friend's house and you're careful with their, dishes or whatever, because it's not yours and you want to, you respect them and you want to show them respect. We should do that same thing with God. Everything is God's. Everything is God's. So how are we treating his children? How are we treating this, its material energy? How are we treating the environment? What's our relationship with time? This is all God's. We may think it's our own, but it's not. It's God's. So if we can approach it with that mentality, just those little tweaks in perspective, how that will change our reality and our relationship with people and things. Right? It's all God's. It's all God's. We're just caretakers. Should we do what I have? This 31's very short verse. I just have a couple points for that. So let's move forward to 31 and then we'll finish up here. Oh, Meadow says, by the way, I work in the hospitality industry. That's the view I come from. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. That's the view we need to have. We're stewards. It's not ours. Get out of this mindset and do it even as an experiment. When you notice yourself sinking into this doership, this ownership mentality, remember, remember, and then see how it changes your consciousness. And then know that that is God. That is God. Okay, thank you, Matos. Let's do 31.
Such a yogi who engages in the worshipful service of the supersoul, knowing that I and the supersoul are one, remains always in me in all circumstances.
Thank you. So yeah, this verse is explaining that the yogi who understands the oneness between Krishna and the supersoul, right? The supersoul, the all-pervading reality within everyone, remains fully connected to God in all situations. Right? So when we remember that the supersoul within the heart, God in the heart, and God are the same, Krishna are the same, you become firmly situated in him. So this is like the different manifestations of God, right? God is the all-pervading reality. He's everywhere, right? God is inside everybody's heart. And ultimately, this Bhagavan realization, this God is a personal form that I can have a personal relationship with. So Krishna is going to conclude this section by describing who he considers the highest yogi. And that's the next verse. We'll save that next verse for the next class. That'll be the final end to this section. But just to kind of conclude here, to kind of conclude today's takeaways, a true yogi doesn't just withdraw from the world and live in their own inner bubble. That's what we're learning here. They go inward, but only to return with this deeper clarity, compassion, connection. They said that the perfection of yoga is seeing Krishna everywhere, in the hearts of all beings, in every circumstance, in every experience. And because of this vision, they're never truly alone or lost. Right? That's what we're going for, this vision. And it's not reserved for saints living in caves. You don't have to live in an ashram. You don't have to give everything up. Right? It's something we can cultivate right here, right now, wherever we are. We can do this just by training the mind to remember Krishna, even in the middle of ordinary life. And what happens when we do this is we're slowly starting to awaken our spiritual senses. Right? Our material senses are going to be selfish. They're going to act for our own enjoyment. But when we can awaken our spiritual senses, we'll start to see everything and everyone as instruments of Krishna. Right? The world may have felt dull or difficult or meaningless, but when our spiritual senses awaken, it starts to look completely different. It becomes alive with purpose. It's fascinating. It's beautiful. It's joyful. Right? So as we leave today, should just remember this. That Krishna is only one thought away. Wherever you are, whatever we're doing, we can turn towards him. Right? And when we do, we'll find that he was never even far from us. So that's today's class. Does anybody have any final thing they'd like to share? I don't want it to end, Manos. Good news, we'll be back on Thursday. Yeah. Thanks for joining us. It's nice to have you here today. Okay, my friends, now the work. Now we go out into our everyday lives and we try to see God in everyone and everything. And then we take note of how it shifts our consciousness. Okay. Thank you all. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Radha.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hari
Krishna.
Bol.